The basement door had a simple lock. Just a turn latch, the kind you'd find on a bathroom door in a house built 40 years ago. The kind that makes a soft click when it catches and gives you just enough of a feeling that something is sealed, something is held, something is between you and whatever is on the other side. Dessa stood in the kitchen at 11 p.m. and stared at it. She hadn't heard a knock. She hadn't heard a voice. What she'd heard was quieter than both of those things, a single, low shift, like weight redistributing, like something adjusting its position after holding still for a very long time. She didn't move toward it. She didn't call out. She just stood there in the kitchen light and stared at the door and made herself breathe slowly, because some part of her understood that however this night ended, panic wasn't going to help her. She backed away, into the hallway, away from the door. 3 days earlier, none of this had felt possible. Dessa had driven 6 hours to reach Lake Farrell. The property sat at the end of a gravel access road in a part of rural Montana that the Maps app referred to confidently and incorrectly as having 2 nearby towns. There were no nearby towns. There was the lake, the tree line, the dock, and the house, a wide frame structure with a wraparound deck and big windows that faced the water. Beautiful, in a way that required the absence of other people to stay beautiful. Her aunt had purchased it years ago as a summer retreat and rented it out in the off-seasons to offset the cost. Dessa had been here once before, at 17, briefly. She remembered the quiet. She hadn't remembered how complete it was. The arrangement was simple. Her aunt and the older family members were out of state for a funeral, 4 days, maybe 5. Dessa's cousins Rowan and Pell were supposed to be there already, but their drive had been delayed by a mechanical issue. They'd arrive the following morning. One night alone, Dessa had done harder things. She unpacked. She made dinner. She sat on the deck until the sky went dark and the lake became a black mirror, and the only sound was water moving softly against the dock posts. It was fine. It was more than fine. She went to bed and slept without issue and woke up to Rowan and Pell pulling up the gravel drive at 9:30, arguing about something neither of them would explain. The week began. It was Pell who noticed him first. Day 2, just after sunrise. Dessa was still in bed when Pell came to the doorway of her room and said, without particular alarm, "There's someone across the water." Dessa got up. They stood at the deck window together. The far bank was maybe 150 meters across, shallow, open, no real cover. And there was a figure standing on it. Not fishing, not moving, just standing at the waterline with his arms at his sides, looking across at the house. Probably a fisherman, Rowan said from the kitchen, not looking up. "He doesn't have a rod," Pell said. Rowan came to look. The 3 of them stood there for a moment. Then Dessa went to get her coffee, and when she came back to the window, the figure was gone. She looked for the path he would have taken to leave. The bank was open in both directions for at least 60 meters before the tree line began. He hadn't walked away. There hadn't been time. She stood there and turned that fact over quietly in her mind, and then put it down somewhere, and didn't pick it back up until later. If you're watching this late at night, and something like that would have sent you straight back inside, I get it. Drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from tonight. The figure came back the next morning. Rowan saw it this time before either of the others. He stood at the window for a long moment and said nothing, and when Dessa joined him, he pointed across the water without speaking. Same bank, same stillness, the same quality of attention, not casual, not wandering, directed, patient. "Okay," Rowan said finally. "That's a little unusual." "That's what I said yesterday," Pell told him. He didn't have an immediate answer for that. They decided to take the North Trail that afternoon. Their aunt had mentioned it was overgrown past the first bend, but it was a clear day and they had nothing else to do, and sitting inside the house looking at the water had started to feel like waiting. The trail ran along the northern edge of the property before cutting inland through a birch forest and looping back toward the access road. Roughly 30 minutes, round trip. They made it about 12 minutes in before Pell stopped walking. She didn't say anything at first. She just stopped, and Dessa, who had been a few steps behind her, looked up from the trail and followed the line of Pell's gaze off into the tree cover to the left. He was standing in the birches, not on the trail, not approaching, just standing in the gap between 2 trees, partially in shadow, watching them with the same directed stillness as the figure on the bank. The same quality of waiting, the same sense that he had been there for a while before they arrived and had no particular intention of moving. "He's here," Pell said quietly. Nobody ran. Nobody spoke above a low tone. They turned around together and walked back the way they came. Controlled, deliberate. Not fast enough to look like a trigger, but fast enough that the distance between them and the birches grew with every step. Dessa did not look back. She made herself not look back. When they reached the deck, she locked both exterior doors. Rowan sat down on the couch and didn't say anything for a while. The lake outside was flat and silver and completely indifferent. That evening, Dessa took a slow walk around the property's perimeter while there was still light. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. She found it anyway. Near the back deck, where the landscaping dissolved into root growth and low brush at the edge of the tree line, there was a small rusted tin half buried under a raised root. She wouldn't have seen it if she hadn't been walking slowly and looking down. She crouched and pulled it free. The lid came off with some resistance. Inside, burned matchsticks. Dozens of them. Layered. Some near the bottom had darkened with age. The ones on top were recent. She could still catch the faint chemical edge of sulfur when she leaned close. This wasn't one visit. This wasn't someone passing through. Someone had been coming to this specific spot, at this specific property, repeatedly, long enough to fill a tin with evidence of their patience. And whoever it was had been careful enough to never leave anything more identifiable than this. Dessa stood at the tree line with the tin in her hands and understood, with a clarity that felt like cold water, that the man on the bank and the man in the birches hadn't found them by accident. He had been waiting for someone to come back. If you're new here and this is your first video, make sure you subscribe before the next part. It gets worse. Rowan called the non-emergency line that evening. The officer who came out was polite and unhurried in the way that people are when they have already decided before arriving that nothing serious has happened. He looked at the tin. He turned it over in his hands. He set it down on the deck railing and told them it could have been there for years. Hunters used that tree line. Hikers came through in the summer. People had all kinds of reasons to stop somewhere and light something. Lock your doors at night, he said. If you see him again, call it in. He left before dark. Dessa stood on the deck after his taillights disappeared down the gravel road and felt the specific weight of being handed a problem back after asking someone else to carry it. The tin was still on the railing. She picked it up and put it inside, because leaving it out felt like leaving a message. That night nobody slept well. It was just past 1 in the morning when Pell appeared in the doorway of Dessa's room. She didn't knock. She just stood there until Dessa opened her eyes, and when she did, Pell said in a low, steady voice, the kind people use when they're trying very hard not to sound frightened. The basement door handle moved. Dessa sat up. Rattled. No. Turned. Like someone was trying it from the other side. Slowly, they went together to the kitchen. The basement door was locked, the turn latch fully engaged, exactly as Dessa had left it. She pressed her ear briefly to the wood. Nothing. Just the deep, ambient quiet of a house at night, and beneath it the faint sound of the water table settling, which was normal for lakeside properties. She'd read that once. She held on to it now. She told Pell it was probably the foundation shifting. Old houses on soft ground did that, created pressure changes, made hardware move. It was plausible. Pell nodded slowly in the way that meant she didn't fully believe it, but was willing to accept it as a thing to say. What Dessa did not say, what she kept carefully in the back of her mind and did not share, was that the basement had a second entry point. A storm door on the north side of the house, flush with the ground, heavy iron hinges, no exterior lock. It opened from outside with a simple lift and pull. Her aunt had mentioned it once, years ago, as something she kept meaning to fix. She had not fixed it. Dessa lay awake until 4 a.m. and stared at the ceiling and listened to the house. If you're watching this alone right now, first of all, respect. Second, hit that like button. It actually helps more than people realize. In the morning, she checked the storm door. It was open by 4 inches. She stood on the damp grass in the early light and looked at it and did the math quietly. The interior basement door, still locked. He hadn't come up. The storm door had been closed when she'd done her perimeter walk the previous evening. She was certain of that. He had been at the storm door sometime in the night. He had opened it and stopped. Either he'd heard something that made him cautious, or he'd decided that last night wasn't the right moment. She went inside and told Rowan. For the first time since they'd arrived, Rowan had nothing to reframe. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at his hands and said, "We should leave." "I know," Dessa said. They checked the earliest possible checkout. The property management system locked modifications within 48 hours of the booking end date. It was Wednesday morning. Their booking ended Friday. The system would not allow an early departure without the primary account holder's authorization, and the primary account holder, their aunt, was at a funeral reception with her phone on silent. They had until Friday morning to leave officially. It was currently Wednesday. 2 days. Wednesday passed without incident, which was almost worse than if something had happened. The lake sat still and silver, and the far bank stayed empty, and the north trail stayed unwalked, and the house held its quiet like it was saving something. Nobody said much. Nobody went outside alone. Thursday evening, Dessa found Pell in the kitchen just before midnight, sitting at the table in the dark with her hands folded in front of her, staring at the back window. Dessa sat down across from her and didn't turn the light on. After a long moment, Pell said, "I keep thinking about how long that tin was there. How many times he came and nobody knew. How many times he just stood out there and watched whoever was in this house, and then left." Dessa didn't answer. Like, what was he waiting for? Pell said, "What's the right moment look like to someone like that?" The question sat between them on the table, and neither of them touched it. At 2 in the morning, the wireless speaker on the living room shelf activated. It made this soft two-tone chime it made when a new Bluetooth device requested a connection. Dessa was awake. She heard it from the hallway and went still. The connection request stayed open. A device name lit up on the small LED display on the speaker's face. 2 words, a first name she recognized, and a number. The first name was her aunt's. The number was the year the property had been purchased. She stood in the hallway for 3 full seconds and did not move. Then she went to Rowan's room and woke him without raising her voice and said, "Get up right now. Get Pell." The 3 of them moved to the central hallway. Interior wall on both sides. No exterior windows. Furthest point from every entry point in the house. Rowan had his phone out. Dessa went back to the living room, picked up the speaker, solid, dense, the heaviest thing within reach, and returned to the hallway. They stood there in the dark and listened. The basement door handle turned. Once. Slow and deliberate and patient, in the exact way Pell had described. Not the testing rattle of someone hoping it's unlocked, but the careful rotation of someone who already knows the layout and is simply deciding. It stopped. Then, from outside and below, the storm door, the hinges, and footsteps on the basement stairs, ascending without any urgency, without any attempt at silence, as though the person descending them had thought carefully about this moment and had decided that haste was no longer necessary. The door opened. Dessa threw the speaker at the front window. The glass didn't fully shatter. It cracked wide, a deep fracture spiderwebbing from the impact point, loud enough that it landed in the silence like a gunshot. The property alarm triggered 2 seconds later, the exterior siren cutting through everything. Rowan shouted from the hallway. No words, just volume. And the motion lights along the deck rail flooded the entire north side of the property white. The footsteps stopped. A long pause, the kind that has a decision inside it. Then they retreated, back down the stairs, across the basement floor, out through the storm door, gone into the tree line before the alarm had been running for 90 seconds. Stay with me. We're almost at the end, and the part that stayed with Dessa longest wasn't the break-in. The responding officer found a man 400 meters from the property, at the waterline, sitting on a rock as though he'd simply stopped to rest. In his jacket, they found rope, a folding knife, and a torn piece of paper with the property's gate code written on it in ballpoint pen. The gate code had been changed 2 weeks prior. Only the aunt's household and the property management company had the updated combination. No one ever explained how he had it. The man was taken in for questioning. Dessa never learned the outcome. The family didn't discuss it. The property was listed for sale within 4 months and sold without ceremony, and her aunt never brought it up again. Not once. Not in any context. Dessa, Rowan, and Pell left before dawn. The gravel road was dark and the lake behind them was invisible, and the only sound was the car engine and the slow fade of the alarm still running in the empty house. But here's the part that stayed. The Bluetooth connection log on the speaker. Dessa had screenshotted it before they left. She still has it. The device name, her aunt's first name, the year the property was purchased. The device had been within 30 feet of the house when it broadcast. Her aunt had been out of state for 4 days. Dessa has never asked her about it. She's looked at the screenshot hundreds of times and thought about every possible explanation and found ones that are plausible and ones that are almost convincing and one or two that let her sleep. She has not asked. She is not sure she wants to live in the world where she knows the answer. If that ending unsettled you, it should. Share this one with someone who says they don't scare easily. And if you have a story like Dessa's, something that ended but never really ended, drop it in the comments.